Hey, what's going on? You know who it is. You know what it is. All right, you guys, peep game. For the last 30 X amount years, there's always been this talk, this conversation about the 1985 inaugural NBA lottery, in which the NBA came out of nowhere and said that they're changing the rules on how teams pick players, where basically previous to that, the team that had the worst record automatically got the number one overall pick. And the last year that happened was 1984, the Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, John Stockton draft, where the Houston Rockets had the worst record, and basically they ended up drafting Hakeem at number one. And if I'm not mistaken, the previous year before that, in 1983, they also had the number one overall pick, which, if I'm not mistaken, was Ralph Sampson. So basically, the Houston Rockets got back-to-back number one picks. So they thought something was suspicious about that, and teams accused them of tanking games. So the NBA just came out of nowhere and came up with this lottery stuff. Now, keep in mind, the team that had the worst record, and I'm still bitter about this almost 40 years later, the team that had the worst record that year was the Golden State Warriors. And it was kind of funny, as a Warrior fan, do I think the Warriors was possibly taking games to get the number one overall pick, which would be Patrick Ewing? I was like, yeah, I believe they were, because Patrick Ewing was the consensus best player coming out of college, coming out of Georgetown in 1985. But I figured, hey, the Houston Rockets did it, so why couldn't the Warriors do it? And then abruptly, the NBA came out of nowhere with this lottery stuff. And they did this lottery where they had the worst of the worst, and they did this thing with envelopes. And I think the actual lottery would be the top seven picks. That would be the actual lottery. And then the rest would just be drafts, would be just the regular draft. But the Warriors ended up getting the seventh pick, if I'm not mistaken, the seventh or sixth pick, which turned out to be Chris Mullin. And Chris Mullin was a great basketball player. He ended up being a Hall of Fame basketball player, but nothing compared to Patrick Ewing. So Warrior fans were upset, and they felt like David Stern and the NBA screwed them. And there was this thing about the New York Knicks getting the number one overall pick. Now, there's a story that just came out saying that, well, there's a video. If you look at it on YouTube, they say you could see David Stern. Now, there was this talk about a frozen envelope, and I've always believed that those lotteries were rigged. Keep in mind, the Orlando Magic ended up getting back-to-back number one picks. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Houston ended up having back-to-back number one picks in 83 and 84, which was Ralph Sampson and Hakeem. So people were always thinking that something wasn't on the up and up with the lottery. And keep in mind, Donald Sterling basically threatened to leak evidence, or basically, show proof that some of those drafts were rigged, or all of them were rigged. And he ended up getting X amount of money, extra money that a lot of people didn't believe at the time that the Los Angeles Clippers was worth. Now, me, myself, I've never been a David Stern dude. I always thought that David Stern came across as a dictator, and I think to a certain degree he was envious of those players, and he was just too involved. He acted if people came to see him. I think he spent too much time trying to get in front of the cameras. And I just think that he had a little man complex and a penis envy towards primarily those black players. Now, at the end of the day, before you say, well, he loved Michael Jordan, everybody loved Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan made a lot of people millions, or should I say billions of dollars, and particularly Nike. So, you don't have to, like somebody. If they making you money, you can tolerate them. That doesn't mean that you necessarily like them. So that's BS. But it has been a long conspiracy, or people have thought there's been something strange about that draft. But this article talks about that there's a video out that you can find it on YouTube. Now they're saying that this video keeps getting taken down, where they're saying that David Stern pulled an envelope that had like a giant crease in the corner, which was basically the logo for the New York Knicks. And they're saying if you look at how David Stern was looking at that, basically, looking as they turn, basically, I don't know what that device is, whatever that spinning concoction was, that he was looking at it closely. And when he went over there, basically to pick the letters, the envelopes that had what teams was going to draft in this order, he purposely sought out the one with the crease in it. Now they're saying there's a video that you can look up and you will discover it. But they said it's been taken down several times. So that's suspicious within itself. But I didn't like it. They're saying the video is called indisputable video evidence proving that something fishy happened in the 1985 NBA draft lottery. And they're saying this guy, Bill Simmons, put together a video proving it. And then they're saying, look at the 5-minute 31-second mark, and they'll show you proof that David Stern yanked the New York Knicks envelope out. There's a noticeable crease in the corner of the envelope. You can see it for a split second as he pulls the envelope up. It's on the corner. That's pointing towards the bottom of the jar. There's a giant crease. It's right there. It's the same accountant created as he was throwing the envelopes into the drum. Okay, so that's what it's called, an envelope drum. But yeah, there's always been conspiracy talk about that lottery being fixed. I've always believed it. I've been very stern on it. And I always saw David Stern as a hypocrite. And that's funny how David Stern used to love acting like he was the long hand of the law when it came to laying his grooming hand down on these out of line, primarily black players, talking about no one's gonna, jeopardize the integrity of the game. But if this is true, what a hypocrite. You basically rigged, these drafts to where certain players would go to certain cities. And the inaugural lottery, you fixed it possibly to where Patrick Ewing could go play for the team in which basically you're headquartered at. And there was all kind of talk about that Patrick Ewing was told where he was going. And Patrick Ewing in certain interviews has hinted that he knew where he was going to go play at before he was even drafted. So you be the judge. So anyway, if you want to check out the article, it's on something called the Basketball Network, and it is written by Shane Gary Acidera. So, if you get a chance, just check it out. Wouldn't surprise me. I've always thought that anyway. So it's funny that this conversation is starting to pop up more and more. Now that David Stern isn't here, I wonder what else you're going to find out that David Stern knew or was part of. Now, I've always had my thoughts on what happened with the first Michael Jordan retirement, and maybe I'll do a video about it, revisiting what I thought concerning the first Michael Jordan retirement. That's one of them videos. I did that video maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, so it's way back there, but maybe I'll do it over again. But, I've had this conversation with, a few people about this. I've always believed that draft wasn't on the up and up. That's just me. Anyway, it's your boy Town Biz. I'm out.